one. But we
Well,
got
there's a
some
lot
people
going on,
showing
isn't
up.
there?
Yeah, we got some people
I
showing up.
can name some songs.
Go for it. I'd like that part. Actually,
I
I like
was
that
like
part.
a David Bowie and We Could Be Heroes. I played that. I put that to a soundtrack on one. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
I was writing an article about Putin, so I was putting David Bowie and Queen and Under Pressure.
Right. But I was trying to think of, is there one that says, I'm going to rain on your fucking parade?
Yeah, there must be a song about
There
it.
must be a song. If not, I got to tell you this. I don't know if you know this, but I got guitars here. So when you show up at the studio, we'll just sit down and we'll write a song going, and we bombed your fucking house, and we bombed your fucking building, and we shit on your parade.
We don't promote that though. We're the good guys. Are we the
We're the
good
good
guys?
guys.
Are we the good guys?
I actually like what, I like Britney says War Pigs. Dun, 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 dun. I can play War Pigs. But I like what Zelensky said in his post where he says tomorrow depends
But have
on
you?
what we hear today. You know, I
Yeah.
like that Zelensky specifically said this because you weren't on with me the other night, but 2 nights ago I jumped on here impulsively because I have a bad attitude, and there's a um, Ukrainian. I think you and I got on the phone. I told you about this guy named Alexei who is in Brussels somewhere hiding from service and writing that Zelensky strikes. I don't know if it's like strikes victory parade or strikes Putin's parade or something like that. It's like, so on Wednesday you're writing about something that may or may not happen on Saturday, as if it already happened. Yeah, that's not journalism.
No,
That's
that's
something
not
else. That's a
German.
different category. And then what if that's not what happens? What if
That's just
something else
shit
happens?
posting. If you're a military man, if you've got any sense, you won't be hitting the military parade because one, as I wrote about today,
Yeah,
it'll just that's what Putin wants because he wants you to go. He wants to tell his domestic audience, look, see, the Nazis are
terrorists, right?
behind us.
Yeah,
So you don't
exactly.
really want to hit the parade. What you want to do is hit everywhere where he's moved the air defense from.
Exactly, which is
That's where you want to
exactly
hit.
what I think is going to be likely because they moved the air defense stuff to Moscow.
Exactly what he did. We'll let everybody get in, but yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what he did the last couple of nights,
Mm.
which is fantastic.
Well, we got 3 minutes of kind of hanging and chilling. How are you? How was your week?
Okay, I just cooked a shashlik. We had our first barbecue for
Nice.
the year, which was amazing. Considering last week the beginning of last week it was sleet and snow. Now we got +30 today, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
I've just
right.
been in Canada where it's like 2 feet of snow turned up. I got one good day and 2 feet of snow turned up. And then they're sending me pictures of their beautiful sunshine today the minute I left.
Right.
And now I get to Ukraine and I was like, oh, the snow's just following me everywhere I'm going. And suddenly today it's summer again. But I try and tell everybody that Ukraine is the land of extremes. The transition between cold and hot happens super quick in Ukraine.
Right.
And you get 3 days of spring and then summer turns up. And there we go. It's 30 degrees down. I'm having a shashlik when last week it was snowing. So it's been a really good day, to be honest.
I'm gonna
And I think
I'm gonna
it's
tell our
largely down
audience
to
what I
quiet.
did that relates to our thing. This
Oh,
is
I
my
saw that.
friend.
Yeah.
This is my friend Natalie Kravtsova, and her son is Azov defender who's still in captivity after plus 4 years, right? And I met Natalie at one of the Ukraine Media Center. One of my first Ukraine Media Center briefings on, if not the first, on captured defenders. And she and Nastusia and others became like the pillars of how I found my world work in all of that. And so she invited me to a special event today for the Ukrainian moms who are moms of captured
Defender
defenders.
moms.
And they, oh my God, did they yank my heartstrings for 2 hours with some of the
Mm.
most amazing like music. And I'm like I am like the Defender families where I'm cynical of everything that's entertainment, even though I film entertainment. Where like, you're raising money, yeah. She's just playing music, My son's in captivity. I hope you enjoy your show. Like, this is a very common attitude problem, that we have together. And I'm with them on this, actually. This is where we are very much alike. So if there's an event where a promoter is obviously kind of a little out of tune with the emotions of the room, it has shown up a couple of times, but not today. Today was extremely serious, even with some stuff that was like kind of up, like I don't want to say up energy, but like, motivation type of stuff. And a room full of moms who all in their nice vishvanka. And there was a photo exhibit that I'll post between now and Sunday. I think I'll pretty much post it on Sunday for Mother's Day, where they had done very specific portraits. And these are amazing portraits you're going to see when I post them. That I'm a photographer, and the idea that I have the skills to pull off what I saw in these photos, I don't. I have to get there. You could see their role as defender moms. Like in one, she's standing, and they're very beautiful art-like portraits, and yet over one shoulder, instead of just the traditional look only, is one of the brigade flags as part of how it blends into her look. And I'm like, whoa, you pulled that off. And then the last part of what they did, which really hit my heart around, was there was a video while the piano player played a beautiful song that had moms holding their kids in bomb shelters and moms comforting their kids in this hell of and what is a mom like in war? And like, oh my God, I'm just sitting there just like, thank God the camera's out of stand because I couldn't hold it up anymore. I'm just like, I'm in the room with everyone else. But I will say to our viewers, we have 25 in here now, so we can get on to our topic. I let them know, partially in Ukrainian, but also through some friends who were there to talk with me in English with them, that you guys care, that I would be talking about them tonight and over the weekend. And so to all of you who are watching who care about Ukrainians and care about Ukrainians who are in the worst ways, thank you for your support. Thank you for being here tonight. We'll get into our topics. But again, I always let my Ukrainian friends here know that you exist, that you're out there, that you're supportive, and that they're not alone in this. So, yeah, man.
No, my mum's a defender mum. She's
Amen.
English though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, God bless your mom for Mother's Day.
Nowadays, defender mums are Spanish, English, American,
Amen.
Danish, Australian. I mean, they're quite a eclectic bunch now, defender mums.
Well, do you want to let me ask you a question? We didn't really work out our normal worksheet, but we knew what we wanted to talk about.
We didn't. We were lazy today.
Oh, I don't know if you're lazy. Let me brag on you in front of everyone. Shaun works.
Yeah,
Shaun,
good.
I call him throughout the days. What he's doing, trying to get him on the phone, and vice versa. Like, he's a busy dude enjoying the journalism. So let me ask you this: would you like to talk about the Colombian thing I wrote or the parade?
I did find, I mean, that's going to lead on to a couple of things, but yeah, I did find that really interesting. It's because one is the word mercenary is very, very emotive subject, especially for someone like me. It can, like you highlighted, be a death sentence, or you can get people seriously injured for that on the other side, which people don't realize, especially lazy journalism. Lazy journalism would refer to someone as a mercenary. Generally is a very small percentage that are, what I found, are Russian propagandists who are pushing a narrative saying it's mercenary. But British press, even 2 years after my exchange, were still referring to me as a mercenary, which is totally incorrect, totally against. And even when you wrote your article, if you don't mind me saying, we are still, not just by you, but generally we're considered foreign fighters. I'm not a foreign fighter. Foreign fighter makes me sound jihadist. And certainly not jihadist. And it sort of contradicts the word mercenary. If you're a foreign fighter, you must be a mercenary. No, I'm not. I mean, in this day and age, most people go and essentially, can live in countries they're not necessarily born in. And retire in countries not necessarily they're born in. I came here as a Brit guy with a British passport, but essentially never left a country I had legal status in. I
Right,
was literally, just to quickly go over those that don't know, I was literally classed as a mercenary, but I'd never left the country. I had legal residency. My family are Ukrainian. I'd been paying my taxes here and working as a contracted Marine here for like 3 years, since, well, it's several years before the full-scale invasion, 3 years as a Marine. So I, essentially, the Geneva Conventions you highlighted in your piece was exceptionally good because I talk about that all the time about, we're contracted soldiers with the Marines. We work for the government. We
right.
are hold residency and legal status here. We were here before the war, not brought in specifically to fight. We
Mhm,
actually live in the country, not outside of the country, which are
right.
all key parts of being classed as a mercenary under the Geneva Conventions. Yet Russia still pushed that mercenary narrative despite invading the country with
Precisely.
paramilitaries, private military contractors, and essentially mercenaries.
And for the viewers who may not have caught the article, because every broadcast may have a little bit of a different audience. I talked about this a couple nights ago about the article, but it's better with Sean here. Is that Christian Science Monitor, which happens to have some at least respectable journalism in it, enough to think of it as a journalism outlet, um, had a writer from Bogota who said, "Why is Colombia producing X amount of mercenaries?" And then the the instead of saying, "Okay, we have a mercenary topic, but we're briefly mentioning Ukraine." No, it was about a mom who lost her son here in Ukraine. I think he's missing in the current situation. And so that's what set me off. And I thank Google News alerts when I have my International Legion prompt always filling my inbox, that this was one of the ones that came in. And sometimes I ignore the outright Russian propaganda model stuff, and this wasn't in that model. This is the acceptable journalism who engaged in unacceptable framing. So yeah, after some coffee, I sat down and said, okay, we got to write about this all day until we got it done. And part of the reason why is that the Colombians are not getting the boost in support that the Americans and Brits and Canadians get from like NATO and others, the paying attention crowd. They're lost a little in the mix, and thankfully we have supporters who know that, so they try to bridge that gap. But because they're kind of uniquely vulnerable and they're here in big numbers helping, it felt like a strong obligation to set that shit straight. And I've already written
Absolutely.
one letter to the ombudsman email at Christian Science Monitor, and I will prepare probably by Monday a little bit of a pushback campaign demanding a retraction, or at least demanding an op-ed under our voice. I'd be glad to have you and I write it or something, but just like
Mm.
I said, so let me get this straight. I think you journalist dude, you wanted to help this mom you interviewed and you sounded so emotive about what she'd been through, and yet you just called her son a fucking mercenary.
Yeah, which
And
could
that
get
means
him really
he didn't know what that
seriously
meant.
injured.
That's why.
And then you've got the additional foreign fighter, which makes you sound like a jihadist that you're coming in for a fight. Technically, under the Geneva Conventions, if you enlist with a country's military under a government and you fight under a flag, it doesn't matter where you come from. You're
Right, right.
entitled to the rights as a citizen while you're serving a 3-year contract with the
Yeah.
military,
If you're
and
under contract,
that is stats.
if you're under contract and you're paid the same as everyone else, et cetera, there's 6 protocols, and
Yeah,
pretty much those, if you're not in those categories, then you're not a mercenary.
you're
And
not a
it's a
mercenary.
perfectly legal thing. And the reason why it's so important, since we live here in Ukraine, is Ukraine went out of its way to check all those boxes, right? Think
It
about
did,
all
yeah,
the
yeah,
problems the
yeah, yeah.
Legion had, and that was not one of them.
Now, if you're an African that's got to work for Wagner, which is a PMC, and you've invaded Ukraine,
Mhm.
technically you are a mercenary. If you're a paramilitary group like Rusich and you're African, Nepalese, or you're from somewhere out of Russia and you've been brought in to fight,
Yeah,
and you're fighting with the Wagner or Rusich group, you are technically a mercenary. You're not entitled to the rights of the Geneva Convention. But
right,
Russia have got a real habit of not just murdering the English language, but, murdering people as well. I mean, it's just like they do both. I mean, they
right.
try and smear it, put smoke screens up and try and blur this thing that, Ukraine are bringing mercenaries in from South America, yet they're not leaving the country they're being decided to volunteer for, to fight for. Most of them
Right.
you ask for say it's a right versus wrong. This
Yeah.
is a good versus evil.
Right.
That's the way they see it. So it's not. This is Russian propaganda again. This is Russian narratives. This is Russia wanting their lifeline of foreign soldiers coming from the poorest parts of the world, and to keep that flow going, which is why they don't exchange them.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me, I have 2 parts of that before we go to the parade stuff. We have, besides Brahim, which is a different, case we have talked about, there are other, um, non-Ukrainians in captivity who are essentially being ignored right now, yes? You have list? Or you know some names we
Yeah,
should
I
bring up?
do know. I won't name them, but
Fair,
they're
fair.
Australians, Americans, Brits.
That's
I
true.
do
Correct.
know
Correct.
one of the Americans was in when I was in, so he's been in 4 years. He's in his late 60s, I think, mid 60s. And he's been there since we were there. He wasn't exchanged with us for some reason, and he was a teacher. So he joined the National Guard just before the invasion. He's still there 4 years on. Most of these guys won't be exchanged because one, Russia know the value of these people, so they'll keep them. They want to put pressure on Zelensky. Part of why you hold prisoners of war is you don't want to give them back. You want to put pressure on leadership of the opposing side, and uh, Russia know the value of these people. They knew the value of me. They just wanted Victor Medvedchuk. So that's
Right.
why I was lucky enough to be exchanged. I'm still the last, and I'm going to be careful how I say this because I don't want to say foreign fighter, but I was the last. Why media can't say Shaun Pinner, Ukrainian Marine, is beyond me. I was a Ukrainian
Right.
Marine.
Right.
I was here, spent 8 years in Ukraine. I was here longer than I was in the
Amen.
UK. But foreign fighter and mercenaries sell papers, sell articles.
That's
And
right.
essentially, that's why they use that tagline. But essentially, I'm just a Ukrainian Marine, just got a British passport. But the
Amen.
media, even the Western media, just wanna sideline that and forget about that.
Well,
So
I
they do
push
the
back
same with
against
Spanish. They do the Colombians.
I pushed back against the South African account on Twitter that was kinda I think you saw that post that was talking about, "Well, why don't they just do this for elections or something?" Like, "Why don't you just, like, shut the fuck up already? Are you Ukrainian?" And my answer often will be,
Yes.
you can always ask my neighbors. Like, if I don't say it about myself, it's one thing, but what do my Ukrainian peers say about it? They always say, "Bro, you've been through all this with us. You're one of us now. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're Ukrainian."
until you
Yeah.
make borscht, and then you're not. It's like
Right,
because
right.
then my friends would say,
That's
I say,
great.
"What do you think of my Ukrainian borscht?" And they go, "Sean, it's not Ukrainian
Dude, that's
because
still soup.
it's true. That's it. You're English. It's not Ukrainian." So until you get into the food bracket, it's not.
Right, right.
It's
Well,
not.
I was hanging out with a friend of mine, a Ukrainian who teaches English to Ukrainians, and, when we were talking, I basically talk to the students so they can ask me questions in English, and then I can respond back. Plus, I get to practice my rudimentary Ukrainian with them to be in the same boat that they're in, and we kinda do this thing, but as we kind of relaxed and got into some different parts of the conversation, I was like, "Yeah, no shoti," like, "Dude, you're so Ukrainian," or, "Дай
Yeah.
Боже," like, "Oh, you're so Ukrainian."
You're
Like,
bored.
"Yeah, yeah, yeah, you're one of us now." But it
Yeah.
is, for, for disingenuous people, it's one category. My concern is that we have legitimate journalists who need to just be corrected, essentially, so that what
Yeah.
they say
It's
is
lazy
accurate on the outside.
journalism a lot of the
Yeah.
time. And,
Yeah.
they wanna sell, they want clicks, so mercenary sales,
Absolutely.
mercenary get clicks.
It's sensational, and it didn't help
Yeah.
any Colombians. If the ambition of the article was to help Colombians and help awareness, it absolutely did not do that. It did not address
So it's
Colombia's issues. It did not
it's not
address.
limited to Colombians, it's
Yeah,
happened to me
exactly.
still. But the thing is,
Something
as
like that.
time's gone on, the more we've gone to there's a regulatory body in UK called IPSO.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah, right.
literally, I've reported. I won't name them, but I've reported papers to IPSO, which then has literally got the tag mercenary removed. So
Right.
we've had to go to those limits even 2 or 3 years on. Now, 3, 4 years on, generally the people that still call me mercenary, you can pretty much guarantee that if you do a bit of a background check, it's going to be something connected to communism, communist paper, Russians. In some way, it'll be something connected to that.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So that title of that article for you guys a couple days ago was "The Word That Gets Soldiers Killed: How Christian Science Monitor handed the Russians the tag they didn't need, the citation they didn't need." Now, would you like to tell our wonderful viewers, my dear journalist friend, some of the articles that you've done in the last week or so?
Cool, bloody hell. Good job I got. Ukraine strikes deep into Russia was the last one I did, which was the
Hmm.
last couple of nights. And then we did Zelensky officially rejects Putin's ceasefire. But we'll go back to, let's start with Zelensky condemns Russia after deadly civilian strikes. These strikes by Russia are escalated beyond belief to
Hmm.
solely target civilians. We've all heard of the Kherson Safari. That's
Hmm.
quite known to many viewers now, where they even target dogs, training pilots up to hit animals. But civilians are being targeted. Did you see the disturbing video this week of the woman and her mother around a tree in Kramatorsk, trying to
Yeah, yeah,
avoid
yeah,
the drones that were hunting them around Kramatorsk? I mean, Kherson's been going, with that for a while, but wasn't that video clip just absolute? If we could play it now, we'll play it now. But
yeah.
absolute, wasn't that just? You could visibly see on the woman's face how scared they were, just inching around a tree, trying to avoid, sort of trying to hide from drones in Kherson, in Kramatorsk. That's what they've been doing in Kherson for many, many months now, you know? So
Right.
so this is direct attacks, escalated attacks on civilians. We all know they've hit civilians. We all know about Mariupol. We know about Bucha. We know about Irpin. We know about all those places where the atrocities have taken place. We found mass graves. We've got videos of torture going on. Well, this is like a new level now. It's like we can't make room on the battle. We can't get any ground. We can't get any headway on the battlefield. So now we're going to take out civilians. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. It was just horrendous. I mean,
Mother's
this
Day this
poor
weekend. This is a mom in Ukraine. Mother's Day in Ukraine.
what you can't hear
This,
is the drones going off around them,
yeah.
which they're trying to hide. I mean, it's
Mm.
heartbreaking, these videos of, it's, they're hitting buses, they're hitting trains. Even I'm coming in on the train now thinking, we
Yeah,
get debussed from the train coming in across the board. If there's drones close, we get out of the train now, so the train just stops on the tracks and you have to
yeah.
leave the train. So that's just,
They hit
Russia
a train
now
right before my
targeting.
last trip to Kharkiv. They hit the train in Sumy the day before my trip. Then they hit a train in Kharkiv. I don't know if it was at the station area yet, but 2 days after I'd been on the train from Kharkiv. Um, and it's clear that they're going after civilian targets like we've talked about. They also hit a kindergarten just 2 days ago in Sumy.
Mm,
They have double tapped rescuers this week that were on site, and they
yeah.
know that they're doing it. So yeah. Um, and you had this here. Zelensky condemns Russia after deadly civilian strikes, but where is everyone else? Yeah,
Where is everyone? Where's the international condemnation? It's dead. It's mute.
yeah,
There's nothing. Where's the UN? Where's Antonio Guterres? Where's the Red Cross? Where's people telling them to stop
yeah.
doing this? Where's
Oh, the
the
Red Cross was with
outcry?
us today, by the way, just so you know, for everyone for the record.
Oh,
They were on
did
hand
you
at
give
our
them some
event.
shit?
Not
Do you
not
know
today,
someone from the UN came? I met
but
someone from the UN the other day, and they apologized to me because they work for the UN. How
mhm,
sad is that?
yeah.
They just went, "Oh, I know what you must think of the UN." I was like, "No, you have no idea."
Well, you have the
You
one
have
here that I like this piece that you put out yesterday. That Zelensky officially rejects Putin's ceasefire as Russia attacks continue across Ukraine. And one of the things I think our viewers benefit from our contribution to journalism here We've said this before, like you being a Brit, me being an American, but we're here, like here, live here, go through it with everyone. You definitely went through it differently than I did, bro.
Mm.
But we're here with people in a way that is not the coming and going crowd. We're organically here. You're married here. I lived for my first 3.5 years with a Ukrainian family every day, Kherson Southern family. So we didn't like live at the what we think of in Kiev. We have sort of an expat area in
Mm.
Midtown where like all the expats when they come in town, they mostly are in this kind of general area. There are almost none that live on this side of the river. They don't live out in the normal like Ukrainian. And so when we're talking about these things, we're surrounded by it, including surrounded by
Mm.
Ukrainian perspective of what these things mean, ceasefires.
Yeah, certainly Dnipro. I don't see any foreigners
Fuck yeah.
really down here, none at all. I'm talking
Yeah.
to Ukrainians all the time, and a lot of Russian-speaking Ukrainians who have had
Yeah.
their homes totaled or their villages crushed, or in the east of Ukraine. So
Hmm.
predominantly Dnipro is like 50-50 because it's the first transit city between those coming from the west, the east through to
Mhm.
the west who have lost all their homes and stuff. So there's a real mishmash of population here, especially those that have lost their homes. So I spend my life talking Russian because I learned Suzik Russian. So, it's not outlawed. Forget what you hear.
Right. Right.
Forget what you hear in the
Russian's not
media. It's
outlawed.
just
Yeah.
not, I like I
Don't
speak it
start
every
your
every
shit.
day. So it's just not, it's not outlawed, which is kind of weird. My
Yeah.
wife's a Russian speaker, predominantly first language, and family are, and friends
Right.
are, and everybody from Mariupol is sort of congregated around here,
Yeah.
identify as Ukrainian but speak Suzik, or a form
I
of
know
Russian
enough people
Ukrainian.
in Odessa that will speak Russian while saying Putin Kulilo, like
Mm.
they'll speak Russian and then they'll say Pizdets Rossiyskiy Federation.
Most of the Azov guys I worked with in 2018,
Yeah.
2020, most of those spoke Russian. So it's not
Yeah.
about saving the Russian speakers because Putin's bombed them and
Right.
destroyed their homes. So it was never about saving the Russian speakers. That's a load of baloney. But what essentially, like you touched on, was the fact that I'm able to speak. Not I'm not Ukrainian, but I'm able worked with them, lived with them, spent all my time here in the military with
Right.
them.
Right.
So I do understand a bit of the political situation here. So I
Hmm.
can't speak as much about winning this war as them.
Right.
But yeah, certainly I don't blame Zelensky for cancelling the ceasefire. This is the first year I can remember that we've actually got the upper hand. This is the
Right.
first year where you're seeing Putin say things like, we want a ceasefire. We need you to have a ceasefire. What you need us to have your parade. This is
Yeah.
like, hold
Exactly.
on a minute. We're now hitting Rostov-Don. Let me tell you the story about Rostov-Don over last night. Last night,
Yeah.
Rostov-Don got smashed. There's air defense missiles in Russia flying into residential buildings. There's chaos everywhere in Rostov-Don. 4 years ago, I was sitting in Rostov-Don on my prisoner exchange. Did I ever think then, if somebody told me 4 years from now we'll be smashing Rostov-Don and it will chaotic and Rostov-Don, Ukraine will be putting pressure on that. I'll be
Hmm.
sitting in that airport now going, yeah, that's never going to happen. We just got smashed in Mariupol. I'm being exchanged and going to Riyadh. I'm a POW for 7 months. Russia's going to win this war. Now you look at 4 years
Yeah.
on, and I'm sitting there going, come on, started because that's going to win the war. If you put pressure on Rostov-Don and the airport, not only did they hit Rostov-Don, they hit the oil refinery, Yaroslav, or they stopped 13 airports. They've stopped the travel till the 13th of May.
Oh, I
They've put
love it.
pressure on Moscow. This
She
is
is not
what's going
coming.
to win the
She
war.
is not coming to the parade.
She's not
Foreign journalists who
pissing.
had been accredited to cover the parade tomorrow, all of that is over. Only Russians will cover. SMS and all those services have been turned off.
Yeah,
If
all the
and the air
internet,
defense
yeah.
has been scrambled to Moscow. So
They now
literally,
cancelled
yeah,
accreditation for foreign press,
yeah,
or I don't
exactly.
know. I did read somewhere that they might have retracted that, but so you're
I don't
sitting
think
there
so.
saying,
Maybe, I mean, but
"This
Sky
is
and
what's
others
going
have
to win the
reported that
war."
they had them pulled. Yeah,
And then your last thing I saw when I came on was that Putin's now not going to initiate the call, but he's happy to now talk to Europe and America about stopping this war. Now that's a lot of pressure on
Robert
Putin.
Fico is going to take the message from Zelensky to the Kremlin as well.
Exactly. So
And
I mean,
yeah,
Putin, if he's gone. I mean, I'm going to kid you not. Go out on a limb here. If he finished this war where it is, he's dead in the water. He's
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
He's lost. He's not achieved any of his goals for the invasion in the first place. He's not denazified the country.
Hmm.
He's certainly, since 2014, not taken Donetsk Oblast. He's not taken a major city. He's taken less than 2% of the country since 2022, lost 1.3 million in the process, and degraded his military to
And
a point
losing
where it's
at a
slowly
upward
struggling.
tick. He's losing at an upward tick now, uh, in a way that is not true of the first few years. Like literally, the
No,
more this goes on, the more he's losing in
he's lost dominance in the Black Sea. He's
ratio.
lost Syria, 8-year partnership in the
Yeah,
Middle East. He's
Syria no
losing
longer there.
Venezuela.
Hungary no longer
I
there.
mean, his
Venezuela no
economy is
longer
now
there.
flatlining. At some point, and I bet you guarantee at some point, if he says he wants Donetsk and Luhansk and he'll stop, at some point, I'm hoping somebody says, hold on a minute, we're winning this war. You know, the longer this goes on, the more you're going to suffer. Why are we going to give
Right.
up Donetsk and Luhansk? We could take, 4 more years, we could take Crimea. We could actually, if this went on for another 4 years,
Yeah.
the way you're losing ground and losing countries and losing support and losing your economy, providing Europe can fund this and providing America chips in, you can put a lot of pressure on Russia right now. Whether we've
Yeah.
got manning is another issue.
Right.
But you're in a position now where we're now calling the shots. Is Zelensky going to sit there, and say, "Yeah, we'll give up Donbass"? No, of course
Yeah.
not, because he can sit there and what's
Who's got
left
the
then?
cards, baby? Who's
Who's
got the
got the?
cards?
Vice
Man.
said. Vice said tonight. He said, "Actually, Ukraine have done better since America dropped out of
Yeah.
this." And I tend to agree. I mean, they're selling weapons. They've dropped out. The peace deal, the so-called
Directly
peace
negotiating with
deal.
all the guys in the Middle East, directly negotiating with Japan.
Yeah,
The
Europe stepped up.
status of Ukraine's diplomatic power today compared to 4 years would require a
It's
calculator, yeah, to
it's
come out
it's
and
it's accelerated.
yeah. One of the most
Certainly
important
agree.
countries on the earth at this point.
Technology, yeah, because the only other person that's fought in a war in this caliber and this sort of drone warfare is Russia. So if Ukraine lose, Russia's the dominant force
That's
on the
right.
planet in this sort of environment. So you know, Ukraine, Ukraine is one of the things that I read quite recently, which I never thought about, was one of the benefits of America invading or attacking, not invading, attacking Iran,
Mhm,
has been Ukraine. I mean,
mhm,
its defense industry, it's gone, actually, we're wasting our time with America. Trump's repetitive pro-Russian garbage.
right,
His peace envoys have never even been to Ukraine. You
right,
know, we're starting to get Vance saying things like, the best thing I ever did was stop aid to Ukraine. So we know where the Trump administration sits. So let's push them to one side. Let's concentrate on Japan, the Middle East, business partners that are going to take all our technology on. And at some point, you're going to have America go, hey, whoa, we're still
right.
here. You know,
Well, here's
woo.
another thing for our viewers, a benefit of those of us in country, versus how we read the internet is that there's 2 things, and I wanna address them briefly, not I don't wanna go into this too much, just but I think we're in the orbit of it, is that, if I were living in America and a 100% supporter of Ukraine, I would be entirely reliant on what's on the internet, what's in print and what's on YouTube and whatever else. And inside those, are a lot of ambitious claims for Ukraine. One of them that came up this week that I wrote an article about a couple days ago where I shot down because I have a bad attitude. Uh, I shot down. I do. I shot down this one account that's called the War Channel or something like that. Hold on, I'll tell you because it's in the opening thing. Where I said that. Hold on. Where is my articles? The crossfire. That's not it. 1 second. It is. Come on. Why is the browser not loading? There we go. Where is it? Where is it?
I hate that when it happens.
Yeah,
I'll
it's like
fill in for you.
I had just done the article because I just talked about it with her friends. I'll just do it off the top of my head then. Um, the account. Oh, it isn't published yet. Sorry, it's a work in progress on my desktop here. Anyway, it's about Crimea and this war channel that's on YouTube. It's got a lot of followers. Puts out some maybe 2 or 3 clips a day, no less. Said Ukraine has begun the liberation of Crimea. And I had a problem with the way the title and the development of the article was stacking very good information, meaning like good in the sense of it's good for Ukraine to have taken these accomplishments in Crimea, to diminish Russia's footprint in Crimea, to make them scramble their resources, to hit officer locations, all the good things that have happened that definitely soften up Crimea and make it less useful to Russia. But the language in the first video, and then it was followed like a few hours later by a similar video making, again, similar, slightly hyperbolic claims in the benefit of Ukraine, is that it's sort of like what a lot of us who were paying attention to the Crimean Beach Party conversations in the first year were advising to slow down a bit because, just speaking accurately is always good enough in my book. Speaking accurately is very important. And I feel for our supporters abroad when you're reaching for all good news because I live here and I go through the same thing. So one to pivot into this is when this week RBC put out an article. They may have been citing someone else because they do that sometimes. Yep, they did. Militarny. I knew that had to be Militarny. I knew that instinctively. It was either that or Defense UA. Ukraine reveals powerful Trizup laser designed to shoot down Russian drones. System easily handles reconnaissance drones at up to 1,500 meters, and has handled smaller FPVs at a closer range, etc. System is currently developed from Celebra Tech, and why I want to bring that up is when we talk about the weapons development. Is I know that there's stuff that you haven't seen in the news that part of me, like when I stood in front of the Flamingo missiles and stuff like that a year ago, it's like, okay, I could make a mock-up, yeah. And from a PSYOP point of view, that's great. Like the Sazmat missile that we're all supposed to be afraid of, from Russia. Could we do the same thing? Of course we could. We could make the ultimate missile thing, and it doesn't have to work. It has to brain fuck you, you know. But the truth is, some of these things actually exist. I know because I've seen some of these things, including models you guys haven't seen that are currently being tested, like using lasers to intercept drones, and all these really cool tech things that 4 years ago were not on the table. They were not part of the conversation. No one was developing them.
No.
Not here, and now this is it, and Ukraine basically gets to be the teacher in the room.
Did you? I'm gonna just highlight, as Alan said there.
Yeah.
You still require infantry. At the end of the day, this
Amen.
is the
Okay, see, Alan Brewer's here.
about
Hi,
Ukraine.
Alan.
So Alan's dead right. You do need infantry because it's the infantry that repair the drones and fly the drones and repair the vehicles and do the logistics and the planning. And so you need you need people essentially, and especially infantry in the front to keep pushing forward. And this is where we're sort of don't know where Ukraine currently sits on it, but certainly innovation is, active defense suits Ukraine. They've always
what the technology did was rebalance the imbalance of the Russian military arsenal.
There's no
versus
definitive.
what was there. Yeah, that's what it did.
Yeah, there's no definitive. Someone's in a better position than the other at the moment. What Ukraine have done incredibly well is put this back to a level playing field where Russia can't act its will on the battlefield.
Right.
And that's where we sit currently. If if suddenly, let's miraculously say, Ukraine got their personnel sorted and they wanted to go on the offensive, they would actually have the same problems as the Russians have in advancing in Ukraine. So technically, there's very wide um, grey zone. It's
Mhm.
not like the thin red line anymore. The trenches and some of the enemy's 500 meters in front of you. There's in some places 100-kilometer grey zone wide, where if you enter that grey zone, the chances of your survival are pretty slim.
Right.
Because it's not part of that grey zone that's not being watched by drones or CCTV or footage. So most Russian soldiers on the advance will be killed long before they ever get to a trench, using the
Correct.
innovations you just talked about,
Right.
especially with defense innovations and stuff like that. That's where Ukraine have excelled,
Right.
because even with over 90% success rates with air defense, only takes a few to get through, as we've seen, and that causes carnage everywhere. So you're now talking you need better air defense like lasers, something innovative that's going to take out 98% of the drones and the ballistics that are being launched by Russia, so that you
Right.
don't have any get through. That's
Right.
where the drive going. But you still need infantry to conduct and to go back to your first point, is that we can't over exaggerate our goals. We're not going to get to be building defense positions in Mariupol within the next 6 months. It's just
No.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
I
Or
personally
what I
don't
called
think
before
you can take.
the straight shot through
You're not
Zaporizhia.
going to do it.
Yeah.
You might
Straight
get to
shot
the
to
Azov.
Melitopol. The things that
Yeah, you might get through Melitopol and then straight down to the Azov Sea, and that's going to. But the Russians are going to be dug
Right.
in and sticking up defensive positions, and they're going to be prepared for that. So you need
Right.
infantry, and unfortunately, Ukraine's going to end up with the same problems going through. Combined arms is extremely difficult now to
Right.
do. It's changed the battlefield forever. And
Right.
until something changes, essentially you're going to end up with small strike groups. However, this is where I keep saying to people, just to end this, this is where I keep telling people, the war is not likely to end on the battlefield now. It's likely to end in the political sphere or the, economically, basically. You're
Right.
just not going to. Hold on, Budanov has been right about Ukraine's needs for. Yeah, of course, we know. I mean, they're certainly pushing for. We touched on the Colombians earlier. A lot of foreign internationals coming over to fight for Ukraine now,
That's right.
and people like a winning side. So you're going to get more,
Right.
especially if the war looks like it's going to end. Especially if you're going to get, it looks like Ukraine's doing better than anticipated, and they're on the winning streak, which they are. I mean, in my view, the power shift has been 7 months, 8 months going. I've been
Yeah.
writing about it for several months now. I was quick to see the power shift and write about it. Certainly people will want to be on a winning side. And this is where I go back to America. They've, for the last 2 years, have been pushing Russia. At some
Mhm.
point,
And now polls are out saying that America is more distrusted than Russia. Reuters posted
yeah, yeah,
today. That was like,
I can believe it.
wow, not good. Let me add it. One part in there is someone because I just got through a little over a month ago. We went out east to Slovyansk and to Kharkiv, to hang out with Azov and Khartia, and we had been there also in October with Khartia and some other groups, watching how they do the training, interviewing guys who are doing the training. And one of the most important parts is how many different types of service guys and women are going through this training to augment whatever their existing roles are. So there were several guys like, "Oh, I've been infantry for 8 years, but I had to come over here to do my training, and then I go back to my unit, etc." So they're augmenting whatever their existing skill sets are, and with additional drone teams. It's in an additive, not like team A and then everything else. It's it's in redundancy in all the units that will be required to fight. So just like they would go through basic training to learn all the things to be a running gunner, Now they do that with a FPV strapped to their side as well, or ability to use UGVs. And I was actually, I don't know if you saw the video of them rescuing Babusi, this one woman on a small UGV this week.
Yeah, I
Man,
saw that.
that's going to be part of our film. I sent that to our director Luke, who has been on our program with us before. And I thought, man, this is so got to be in there, man, because he actually, my friend Luke, developed an 8 engine evacuation chopper, if you will, or drone unit. And but it's for soldiers. It's so that you can get across those river points that are hard to get a physical vehicle in, that you can use this for. But again, it's still soldier to soldier, not civilian being extracted because of drone. Now we've had literally this week a video come out of them literally rolling up a small UGV to a Babusi who crawls up on it, and they just roll her out from the danger zone.
Yeah, I saw it.
Fuck
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
man. And in a slightly comedic point of view, a little over a year ago, in my old apartment, there's a little lake near my old apartment. There's actually a lot of little lakes around my apartment here. And we went over there, and there's this kid whose dad was pulling him on a sleigh with a small remote control car. Said, "Even the kids are drones."
It's a drone. I mean, everything for resupply now is drones.
Exactly.
Gazivac resupply.
Yeah,
And then you've got the
absolutely.
FB types of attack drones. I mean, everything's
Animals.
unmanned vehicles.
Did you see the animals? The 2 animals that were put in pouches and then evacuated out.
Yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah. That was 3 or 4 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah,
They came in.
still.
Yeah, can you imagine
Oh
being
my
a
god.
cat with PTSD coming in on a drone? It's like telling his mates, "Oh my god, you never guess what happened to me."
You ran into your dog. Oh no, this was so out of the dog
No,
territory.
this is. It's like God. I was in this contraption, and there was like 500 feet above the air, flying in, and yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, the way everything's going now. I mean, it's. There's more emphasis now on people, the partisans, and how they work in
Yeah.
occupied territories. How the general consensus
God bless
is now.
Atesh.
Yeah,
God
I
bless
mean, people
Atesh.
just
Yeah,
think it's occupied, but there's loads of shit going on that you guys don't probably hear about, to be
that's
fair,
right.
because you're not here and you don't
And
happen
you're
to
not the
see the telegram
audience.
chats.
The audience is
Yeah.
the Russian who just got the notification. Get the fuck out. That's
Yeah.
the audience.
The reason why Russians can't go on holiday in Berdyansk anymore and places like that. So,
Exactly.
there's a lot going on behind the scenes, which is why part of the reason why Putin is trying to, shut down Western social media and Telegram and apps because he wants to know
Yeah.
who's talking about what. The paranoia's kicking in. So,
Hmm.
it's not going. We know that Ukraine are winning this war now.
Yeah.
It's taken 4 years to get to a point where Russia is economically stretched, where it can't win on the battlefield. This is the mighty Russia.
Yeah.
I go back to what I said at the start. We'll give them a bloody nose. We haven't given them a bloody nose. We've given them a right hook, a left hook. They've been had a 7 count, and now they're coming back and they're on the ropes again. So we've given them a good hiding.
Did you hear
but
Usyk
where we go?
calls his main strike Ivan?
Yeah, yeah,
Did you hear that
yeah.
explanation? Like, why is
No.
that? Well, because see, like in the village, if you hear there's a guy Ivan, he's always like this big dude that comes out. I like the way he
Yeah,
described
yeah.
why he called his strongest hook Ivan. Well, because when you go to the
Because
village,
it's always the
there's gonna be a big
village
guy
big
named
dude.
Ivan, and he's gonna come out and get serious on your ass. Anyway, I want to move slightly because it's in the same category to our wonderful friend Luke Harding. I love Luke Harding. He's one of the only Westerners that's come here to do journalism that I really, really trust, praise. I've got his book, Invasion, on my shelf here, and I've known Luke for several years, but I've been very glad to hang out with him in person. And he did a new article in the Guardian today with our wonderful commander, Robert Brovdi. And Brovdi's like the big deal. He's the one that's the one hitting the oil targets over in Russia. And
Maggie's
in the
birds.
yeah, Rosie's. So he said that there's no logical military sense to hit the parade. And much like you said, there's all these other great targets that would have been a lot better to strike if there were such a thing. So don't expect like a strike on a parade that would be merely symbolic and wouldn't really, it doesn't achieve a military goal, you know.
And you'll be playing straight into Putin's hands for his domestic
It
audience.
would
Why
be,
would you want to do that?
he says strike on Moscow's victory parade would be it would generate headlines, but have little military value. Arguing the attacks would instead target less protect. The attacks should target less protected Russian infrastructure on May 8th. So what I would like to see, you know, I don't like to prognosticate or do that type of thing, but imagine like Operation Spiderweb in all the areas that they weren't thinking because they kind of knew what Russia was going to do because Ukrainians know Russians better than Russians know. Like,
Mm.
I'm very excited for what Ukrainians do because they keep being several steps ahead of the Russian side over and over again.
The cursed bridge of God,
Actually,
eventually.
increasingly, no less. You know, like whereas they were in this position 4 years ago, and then 3 years ago, and 2. Now, increasingly, it keeps moving more in Ukrainian direction of mastery than ever before. So, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cursed bridge will go at some point. It's gonna go. I mean, you know, quite a while. I think it's about 6 months ago. The Russians were telling families to move out of Crimea. You know, you can't, in my view, you can't take Mariupol
Mhm.
unless you take
Mhm.
Crimea. You need to take that to be able to move on.
That's right.
And essentially, I think they hit the last ferry about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I believe. The
Yeah,
Ukrainians. So,
yeah, it's in
so
my list. Yeah, it's
essentially,
on my Crimea report
everything's
I need to
now
put out. Yeah,
coming in either through the cursed bridge, and they can't even use the railways they built because they've blown up the trains on the railways, and now the drone coverage allows them to every time they try and get these trains. You know, as you know, if you blow up a train on the railway track, you've blocked the railway track. So
right.
yeah, with the drone coverage, it's very difficult to move these trains.
Mhm.
So they're limited to what they can do regarding Crimea. I wouldn't be put it past them if there is a deal negotiated. Donetsk is long gone. It's been under control for you know, under Russia for quite a considerable amount of time.
Right,
Whether they negotiate a deal to take back Crimea for Donetsk and Mariupol, I don't know. I mean, but this is a referendum that will need to take place here, and certainly, you know, you don't want to be selling out the people that are expecting you to come back. And,
right, right,
and all those fighting age males are now being recruited by the Russians to fight, against Ukraine in the future, and you've lost them. So I don't know essentially how that's going to go. I personally, talking to friends, especially with National Guard and Azov and people like that, don't want to give up an inch of Donetsk Oblast.
no.
And I think you're going to be,
No one's
I
gonna
think
roll
that's
back
going to
because they
be
were ordered to unless it's part of a strategy to do so.
absolutely, which goes to what I said was with the way developments are going. It's putting Ukraine in a very strong position.
Mhm.
The worst thing Russia ever did was not take Kiev, because it's essentially left Putin out on a ledge there. I mean,
That's right.
he hasn't taken anywhere. He's not
As
moving
they say,
forward.
when you go for the king, don't miss.
Don't miss, and he's missed it by a long way. So
Right,
essentially, I don't think it's going to go in Putin's favor. I can't see a scenario where Putin gets what he needs, especially
right,
now. Ukraine can reach Moscow and
right,
pretty much every part of Russia. So
right.
this has not gone Putin's way at all. And you're seeing that reflected with, you got to remember, there's some stringent laws, that he brought in at the start of this SMO, which could get you 15 years in
Yeah,
prison just
yeah.
by even talking negatively about.
Which brings me
Um,
to one of my like I don't have a lot of favorite Russian things besides like turret tossing. I have some favorite Russian things, but they're very dark. They're very dark. Like if you guys remember, our viewers remember the Babushka Brigade, Putin, and these ladies they were kind of funny, to be honest with you. As much as I despise Russians, some of that stuff starts being a little funny, and especially when they
Typical
did their
Russian, yeah.
yeah when they did their Halloween thing 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years
Yeah,
ago. and they walked out there just like mocking Halloween, and they were so cocky. These old ladies with their phones, and I don't really know who put them all together to do that. Yeah, but there's videos of them out now, and they're upset. They're stressed. All
The
that
swagger's
bullshit.
gone.
The swagger's gone.
In all
So,
Russian
like, how do I live
propaganda,
like this?
the
Like,
swagger is
it was
gone.
easier when it was
It's
on your phone screen, only over in Ukraine. It's different when it's blowing up down the street because the war came home. And now their tone has switched. And I have two channels that were posting those videos this week. You know, remember how they were like this? Yeah, well, this is how they are now. And it's the
mm.
same women. I could see the women, so I know that they were. And they were a whole different fucking tone about,
Not
uh,
just them, but all
yeah,
milk bloggers and the
yeah,
rebels that are going through the system now.
Soloviev.
Just
Yeah,
despite those laws, people are now criticizing it. Even people as sort of saying along the lines that Putin should be trial because of
yeah,
the hollowing out of the military and the failure to be able to, take Ukraine and
yeah,
advance forward. So, there's a lot of things you'll see now that I've never seen in my lifetime that are being said against Putin that essentially would be, breaking those laws he put
yeah,
in at the start of the SMO that he's letting slide, which tells you again that these people are now just gathering momentum in Russia, ready to. And we had the talks of the coup, but to be honest, I've been hearing that for every year. I was quite
sure, yeah,
surprised with
yeah,
the caution thing, but you must get that every 6 months there's a coup, and I just sort of wipe it off, now and just think, yeah, okay, there's another coup. You
right,
know,
right,
like Russia's going bankrupt. You sort of get, 15 times, you sort
right,
of get
right.
a bit, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, sure.
some of that's a wee bit true in the sense that there are certain economic things that because he's
Hmm.
so front loaded his economy into the war
There's a
that
budget deficit
basics
for sure.
are not working anymore. They've got new malls that have been opened that have no customers and shops that go nowhere. Projects that have
Car sales are
stopped.
going down. Yeah, the
Yeah,
air
yeah,
industry's kaput.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's slowly domino effects, and they're going to keep lying and lying and lying until the country goes pop. We know that.
yeah.
But then you've got China that could bail them out for the time being. And they could go on for another 4 years. Will
She's not.
China want
She
nothing?
is not showing up tomorrow.
We don't know. Nobody's turning up tomorrow. That's crazy. There's
But
like,
outright canceled and is sending a different Chinese delegation or has a Chinese delegation there.
yeah, that tells you there's a lot of rats deserting a sinking ship. All those people that were singing, Putin's praises at the start.
Yeah,
Now, Armenia's another one that's just they invited
true.
Zelensky for fuck's sake. This is like a massive, Russian ally.
Right,
It's like, so I think there's a lot of people deserting a sinking ship. And the thing I wrote about today was that when you start getting the war crimes tribunal and the special tribunal that's now being set up, that we should get the judge and things start progressing forward next month,
hmm,
then that's going to highlight more. And you're going to see a lot of internal pressures. Nobody wants to be associated with a war criminal and all that start kicking off when this eventually gets normalized. So you're going
yeah,
to see a lot of people start edging away in the next couple of months, because I wrote an article this week called "The Legal Cases That Are Now Approaching Russia." It's like a tsunami. These are
right,
not just private legal cases, including my own. This is now the special tribunal that's going to be set up for war crimes, similar to style to Nuremberg. So you're now starting to. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on people now. Do you want to be associated? You must have foreign assets, because if you're then going through those courts as a war criminal, you're going to lose those foreign assets to someone like me, who's now
exactly,
who's putting a claim against the way you've treated us. You've stole my house. You've killed my friends, and there's like 6 million forced refugees and people that lost their house in Ukraine. So
right,
people like, if I don't win it, there's another six behind me that are going through this process. If they win it, then suddenly Russia's paying billions and billions and billions in compensation to people, and they're losing assets all around the world. And that's what's
exactly,
approaching. And I don't think many people really understand. You can find it on my Substack. It's called "The Lawsuits Coming for Russia." Why torture cases are becoming the new front line
Mhm.
because there's so many of them. And if it only takes 2 or 3 people to set precedents, and Moscow's in a real problem, because if it's going to come back into the real world, it's going to
Mhm.
have to deal with all these litigation cases. And if the litigation, that means they're going to be seizing Russian assets all around the world. And you can bet your bottom dollar, all those people and all those countries and all those people that were pushing Russia at the start are now sitting there going, do I really want to lose that?
Right.
Do I really want to lose my stuff? Do I, because Russians love stuff. They love their
Exactly.
holidays to Paris and their European vacations and their
Mm.
holiday homes in Italy. Russians love stuff and money. But the problem is now with these things that are going on in Europe, where we should get some movement next month, is that they're going to start potentially losing their stuff,
Right.
which is where my case is really
Like
important. And
what
it's not mine. Aiden has it.
Sweden did this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be fought in the courts.
And
It's going to go in
Sweden
the court.
seizes the tanker, the Geneva, in the Baltic Sea near Trelleborg. The vessel was sailing towards, it was sailing under what Swedish investigators called a false Syrian flag, and was ultimately tied to one of the Russian sanctioned invasion networks. Um, but the fact that these European countries have the backbone to say, no, game on. The fact that
Yeah, game
5
on.
countries, including Ireland, have signed on to War Crimes Tribunal Nuremberg 2.0 is good. So there's a lot of things that are not going their way. And one of the things that's my measurement is like I always think of Soloviev as being Kabuki theater. Never take it for what it is. But if you learn to watch it over time, and you like the way Julia Davis and certain people could pick it apart and like live in it, um, it's not when he speaks, I don't give a fuck what he says, but the more the other voices come on and start venting these specific issues, it's which ones they actually vent about that I kind of take note of. Like, oh, that came up this week, did it? Or they went there, did they? Okay. And so when they start corresponding with what I know I monitor on Telegram of the Russian MilSec, you know, which tends to be pro victory, period, because they're military, and
Mm.
this feeling, you know that the military is different than everyone else in the society. Average civilians, even the biggest cheerleaders for Ukraine, are in the same boat, right? The military guys here speak different than fucking everyone else does.
Mm.
So you got to pay attention to what people in the military say who are doing the fight, including in Russia. And when the Soloviev voices start matching the Milsec crowd of what the fuck are we doing? Why are we doing this instead of that? Then that's where they're showing that the leadership is really screwed, and that they're just trying to, patch
It
fingers
is.
in
They're screwed.
yeah, in the
I'm
dike.
pretty confident they're screwed. I mean, with
They're
what's
definitely
going
screwed,
on with
right? How does it play
yeah,
out?
they're
We don't
definitely
know, but
screwed.
they're screwed.
And
My
you've got the
God.
diehards, which will be Lavrov, Zakharova, Putin,
She won't be
probably.
around anymore. She died of cancer. Anyway.
Eventually, you'll get a sellout. And you've started to see it now with persecutions against deputy ministers who have now scarpered to America because they're
Right.
now in America now, allegedly in America, because they know that Putin needs money, but they don't want to be associated with it. And you're going to see, it's like going back to the 80s again.
Right.
It's really exciting because it's like you're going back to the 80s where all these defectors now are all start to, I don't want to be associated with war crimes. I'm not a Nazi. We didn't torture anybody in East Ukraine, I'm going to go over and protect myself. I'm going to
Right.
go over and I'm going to go and protect myself, and I'll sell my secrets to the Americans. You wait in
Right.
the next 6 months. How many times have I been wrong? And I'm just a butt-fuck grunt. I was like, I didn't know anything about Russia when I came here in 2018. I couldn't speak the flipping language. I come
Mhm.
with a good military career that gives me some savvy and some common sense in that
Right.
department.
Right. Right.
But did I really know what living next to Russia was like until I got here? My wife taught me most of it about
Yeah.
when I said to her, I said, look, I said, you can't blame a whole nation for one man's imperialist dream. And my wife said to me, when you've lived here 5 years we'll talk about this again. And now, look, 5 years on, I've been captured, tortured, lost a house. I learned Russian first, and now I sit there and go, she was so right. By the now, you go, I fucking hate Russia. They're exactly, they kill, saving the Russian speakers is the worst thing that gets my goat, gets my antennas going, gets me really riled up. Because I said, I am a freaking Russian speaker. I was
Yeah.
born in Britain. I learned Russian first. My family are all Russian speakers, predominantly, who identify as Ukrainian. 6 million of us have lost our homes and
That's right.
internally displaced. I mean,
My
to sit
mom is
there
a
and say
Russian
that.
speaker from my Ukrainian mom is a Russian speaker from Kherson that can't go home. I will go
And
see her
normally
day
it's an
after
American
tomorrow.
in Idaho in his mum's basement telling me that, oh yeah, well,
Oh yeah,
he's saving the Russian speakers. And you're going, really, mate? Seriously? Know your audience? It's like, that's the biggest thing. But you're seeing all these people now going to be defected. I bet you the next 6 months. When have I been wrong yet?
right.
Maybe I was the only one sitting there in a bunch of Ukrainians telling them they were going to invade. And they were going, no, mate, no, Sean, we're like brothers. This will sort itself out. My wife
Yep.
wanted to spend money on a kitchen because, she didn't think they would invade. We hear this every year. And we did. We heard this every year. But now I'm sitting there again saying to you, what's the next 6 months? I told you about the power shift. I told you that we're winning this war when people were going, Sean, you're not going to get Mariupol back. And now look at where we're sitting now. The power shift. Now we're going to get defectors. Now we're going to start seeing these closest allies start to split, which we're already starting to see with the mill bloggers and everything else. Eventually, it will crumble, like all
Yeah.
dictatorships do. They turn inwards. He gets paranoid. He turns into the Hitler thing, and that's it. Hopefully, he'll shoot himself in a bunker.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. I'm good. I'd like to be honest, I want to see him in prison for a long period
Oh
of
yeah, yeah.
time.
I'm completely. One of the things when people whenever run into someone who's obviously an unapologetic Nazi, I always go, okay, you like Hitler? Yeah. Pull a full Hitler on me. They don't like that answer.
S, SB
Get
said, that's the thing I'm watching. The tribunal, will it move things forward? Yes, it will, for all the reasons I just said. It will. Justice has a long memory. It takes its time.
right.
Eventually, Russia will have to, if it wants to get back into the normal trade routes and into the world, it will have to settle its litigation suits, which are mounting up like a tsunami at the moment, which means it's going to lose billions. And even if I don't win, the next 6 people behind me will be going there going, well, he didn't win because of that. We're going to go. And they will eventually set a precedent when then every Ukrainian, anybody affected by Russian aggression, will soon be able to claim off the Russian state. No sovereign immunity because they're essentially an ICC wanted war criminal. They've tortured people, sexually abused people, massacres, mass graves. It will come alive. It's not a quick process, and you've got to have faith and don't lose hope.
That's right. Um, a small bit I noticed in today. It's not. I don't want to deviate. I'm just put it on the table. We'll briefly mention it and go back. We'll talk as a symbolism. There's a forest fire up in Chernihiv along the
I
border.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that the Russians attack started the other day. That's now blowing into Russia. Keep it up, homie. Not very
Shame.
smart. So those types of things, these things you just keep not working out in their favor or good. Here's another one that came up this week that helped me complete a document I'd been working on for a while. That like I got the article finally out called "Goodbye Russia, Goodbye Lenin." Europe isn't waiting for a ceasefire to dismantle 3 decades of Kremlin's leverage. It's already done most of it, and it was because of, in fact, a friend of mine arrived today from. Or last couple of days he arrived in Kiev today, but he arrived and his way is to come in from Moldova through Odessa, and that's actually what the basis of my story is about, is how because of the Transnistria situation with Russia in between, there are a lot of things that are complicated about trying to deal with Moldova and Romania that have been like really set back for Russia by the fact that they started building these bridges in between over the Prut River, And when I was going through some of those reports, I was like, so they're really finally just working around something that they've ignored for decades. They could have solved a long time ago to increase those transported items, and now they're like, "Fuck it, we'll do it this way." And it basically removes Russia's benefit of having Transnistria, no less. It sort of just
Mm.
takes the oxygen out of the room. And then I kept going down more of a list of a series of other ways in which, in that article, "Goodbye Russia, Goodbye Lenin," where a lot of things that kept Europe mollified for dealing with Russia are no longer that situation. They're slowly changing those situations, and it's not just about oil. It's a series of other things that were just so wired in to allow Russia to just conveniently yank the collar of Europe, and Europeans are learning. They're slowly catching on, including now Russian soldiers casually being able to go into Europe. Not so much.
Yeah, that's long overdue. I mean, there's always going to be the minerals and everything else, and the oil that Europe needs, and the commercial side of Russia and what it can give, which is one thing. But I think one of the biggest things that Russia's lost from this war is what Ukraine have unlocked. It's not Russia's size its was always its benefit. It was always
Right.
the thing that scared the West the most was its size and its nuclear weapons. And
Mhm.
Ukraine have just completely blasted and unlock that. It's like nobody's scared of it. It's its Achilles
Right.
heel now. It can't protect anywhere. It's
Yeah.
essentially bombing. Ukraine's bombing everywhere. It's recycling facilities. Oil facilities. It's stopping air travel. It could do it, whenever it feels like it, Ukraine
Right.
now. It's like, 13 airports it's stopped till the 12th of May now because of just what? It hit the main building,
Mhm.
the air traffic control main building. So, essentially, Ukraine knows where all of the problem spots are for Russia. Whereas, you know, Ukraine has all the funding now from Europe and all the advanced tech and all the advice
And
and the
a
money from Europe.
and a vulnerable but stable economy right now.
And even Russia didn't really didn't really understand how effective Western weapons were or are. Technology, its imperialist grandioso
Right.
entitled it to take Ukraine, and unfortunately, Ukrainians said no. It's not going to happen. It's just
Right.
not go and, its biggest mistake was not taking Kiev when it had the chance, because once that happened, it was drawn into a war of attrition. And Ukrainians are now, I would say, despite all the bombings across the area and across Ukraine, generally, I think the atmosphere has lifted, dare I say, in a lot
Yeah.
of places.
Well, I
It's
mean, there's
it's
currently activity in Chernihiv, in Sumy. Kharkiv was under attack earlier, so this idea, I mean, I know it's not the ninth yet, but the idea of this being, Russia's not gonna be doing things is just BS. We had air raids, throughout the day today earlier.
This is
We had 'em.
normal for
Yeah,
us for
yeah,
4 years. It's not normal
yeah,
for Russians.
yeah, and now
It's
they're the ones that get
just
the
not
taste of it,
normal.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, now they're starting to get, really are starting to get Rostov Don being the one I sat there fascinated with the video clips last night of
Right,
Rostov
right,
Don just getting smashed, and I was thinking, "Oh my god," I was 4 years ago, I was sitting there going, "This looks remarkably calm. This looks like a place in England. Well, I'm at an airport in Europe, this looks amazingly calm here." Yeah, I just spent 7 weeks in Mariupol just taking hit after hit after hit. There I am, and not far away in Rostov-Don, and it's normal life,
right.
To last night seeing Rostov-Don look like Armageddon, air defense plowing into buildings, and
Mm.
Ukrainian drones hitting oil facilities, and this is moving into Russia. I can't emphasize that enough. This is really moving into Russia big
One of
time.
the things that was in the Soloviev Bitch Fest, with some of those, guys,
Oh
again,
yeah,
was
come back to
the
sorry.
yeah, go ahead, go for it. Grab it.
Lynn just reminded me, I sat there and watched Azov hitting Russian military targets in Mariupol, and the headline was,
Exactly.
"Azov's back in Mariupol." I was like, come on,
Feel
let's hit
it.
'em. Let's get in there. So this is if you're a Russian on the front lines right now, you got to be sitting there going, I'm not comfortable about this.
Yeah, and one of the guys that was on, I don't remember who the other chuckle fucks that are on Slovia, because they're mostly NPC characters or NPCs, non-player characters. Is that by the way, we have 63 friends here. Thank you for everyone who's been watching. We're not done yet, but I just want to thank you for being here. When I see all these wonderful names in here, so we're
And we're
very
getting more
thankful
and
for.
more every week. It's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
you
like
guys are really, really,
live
really.
as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
man. Um, one of the commentators on Slovia this week was griping that why are we not doing more? Why are we not doing more? I mean, our people want to go like on vacation. This is what we like to do. So like they can't go to Tuaps because it's like it's covered with smoke right now, and like exactly, yeah.
You can go
Just
to
like the
North
places we
Korea.
don't get to go to because they're covered with fucking smoke. We still go to the Black Sea, but it's still covered with smoke and drones. So watching them get apoplectic about their resort life that they want to have, going up in flames on their territory is delicious. It's much no.
That it shouldn't be, but it is because we've had 4 years of it. We've had
Yeah,
4 years of war. We've had no airports open for 4 years. We've had Russia launch its genocidal invasion, commit
yeah,
atrocities, and most Russians didn't even want to know about it. They just, as long as it's not impacting me, then generally I'm just going to keep ticking along. Now that we've got more response, not from the airstrikes, not from the drone strikes, not from ballistics going into Russia, but from Putin shutting social media down. That was
that's right.
the thing that, let's be honest, that's the thing that's kickstarted it. Their
Right.
social media shut down. So
And
not
on
only have
a
you got,
downside, just so that again we get our measures and expectations. This is what I said like earlier when we talked about how not to go into the hopium phase. Um, is that I don't want to get too into it for OPSEC purposes for our peoples, but it's affecting people in occupation as well. There are people who are having more increased difficulty communicating to
yeah,
their Ukrainian family and or friends and or whoever they need to
absolutely.
for the exact same reasons that Russians are being limited from um, you know carrying on their war. At the same time, it is definitely affecting in you know Zaporizhia and Kherson would be the ones I know most about, where people are not able to communicate the ways that they were before,
No.
and it's created an additional stress for families that are waiting. Those things I want our supporters when we think of these things go. Remember, some technology changes work more than one direction, but we do want it to affect the Russian military, and more important, especially for the Russian military, is imagine a world. I'll do here. I'm a just bug you guys with my rod silly. Imagine if you will, our little Twilight Zone moment. Imagine if you will, a man wakes up one morning and quits the fucking Russian military because shit don't fucking work. And I'll give it to Sean for doing the whole. Is this thing on? So we did that show a few weeks back. But
Yeah.
civilians can do more without communication than the military can.
Mm.
The life can go on as a civilian without a lot of fancy communication in a way that the military and the supporting governance behind the military really have to have that fucking communication to maintain control. And the more
It's
that
essential,
it's
especially with
essential
drones
to
now,
the control. Right.
AI and everything else. Communication is essential. And when Starlink was shut down, Telegram became the new battle app
Right. Right.
because the Russian military relied upon that. Everything
Right.
from communities raising money through to quick chats, get arounds to be able to talk to other guys further down the line. And unfortunately, when Starlink was closed,
Right.
Putin decided to shut down Telegram, which
That's right.
caused the death of and the advance where Ukraine liberated 480 kilometers, largely down to the fact that Russia had no comms. So there's a lot of animosity
Yeah.
with the way this has been run from,
The more
let's
he
say,
takes it out on the
Prigozhin to
people.
now.
Yeah, the more he takes down the people, there are more opportunities. See, I love studying psyop for the reason that I understand brain fuckery on that level. I call it the militarized version of marketing. Um,
Mm.
but m both marketing, regular marketing, which I've spent many, many years doing. I do it in the digital form on what online, etcetera, in graphic form. Um, it works on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, you need a domicile, you need food, then you need a place in your community, and then as you move up the scale, for transcendence is at the top of it. There are these needs, and they're fairly universal. And PSYOP works on those exact same principles. So the more Russia keeps failing, the better the foreign PSYOP, and if there are any chances for it, internal PSYOP, to really keep pushing that button in a way that here, I don't think it would work anymore because we've been, like a dog that's been beat too much anymore. Like, what are you gonna do? Beat me some more today? Mhm. Yeah. There's something
Mayday.
you can't do to us anymore here, that has already been
Mm.
through, and now the Russians are feeling it, and with just the right oomph, there is definitely some more pain. The more he cracks down on domestic control, like he's done in the last 24 hours because of tomorrow, the better, really.
Yeah, he just wants to reduce the audience to his failures at the end of the
Right,
day, and that's why you're getting. But that's what's triggered a lot of the animosity inside Russia. Not what Ukraine's doing, but
right,
what Putin's done. I literally, like Lynn says, shot himself in the foot with that.
yeah,
Especially with the military, with no backup. This is a Russian military that prides itself on being independent, not rely
yeah.
upon Western tech, who has now been found keeping up with the losses now. You know, even Fedorov said for 4 straight months, we've killed more Russians than they can recruit.
That
So
was the
this is
message that was
going
the message when he came on the way in. What's the goal, sir?
it's
30,000.
getting it's going tits up for Russia, and he knows it, and everybody knows it, and the economy knows it, and he'll be living with this for the next 20
Yeah.
years as one of the worst military decisions ever in the history of Russia.
Well, here's the interesting part of what's today is about in Ukraine on the 8th of May. I'm gonna talk about the word "May" here in just a minute in Ukrainian, before we go, a little language thing. And then what it means for Russia tomorrow, and actually why they're not on the same day. Wait, but weren't they the same country during this Victory Day all those years ago? Yes, and they have not been on the same day ever since. Um, is most people do not understand that Russia's greatest, the Great War, it's symbolic in a way that was false from the start because it was the Ukrainians who did the fighting, the Ukrainians who did the dying. 7 million Ukrainians died. And the fact that even Russia created a myth for itself that was false is in some way for us great. Because it meant that they walked in. Imagine a guy who thinks he's a prize fighter and thinks he can take on Tyson because he's bullshitted everyone around him that he's this great boxer because everyone kept letting him get away with it. Everyone let him win, or he kept going up against chumps, and then finally gets in the ring with a real fighter and gets the shit kicked out of him because he was a fluff the entire time. It's like what I used to talk about kung fu, or karate belt factories. Great. You learned all the forms. Your teacher throws you around school. Yeah. And then you get an actual fight and you get your ass kicked because someone else did all the fighting. So there's a lot of ways in which this war has shown what World War II really was, which is Ukraine did the fighting, Ukraine did the losing, and we wouldn't. And one of the historians today was quoted, that we wouldn't have had World War II without Russia. It wasn't just the Nazis.
Mm. Oh, no, yeah, yeah.
Russia thought, well, we'll just do this and this and this, And a big part of what caused World War II and is at the root of World War II mythology fucking Russia to this day is they thought they were the great ones doing it and had believed their own bullshit like the brotherly nations, right? Well, Russia was forcing everyone else to be there and symbolically would throw up a Ukrainian flag, the Ukrainian SSR, Georgian SSR, all these other SSRs that weren't authentic because it still meant you're Russian, you know? Uh, and now that it's not that way anymore, where they put out the Buryats and the others, they're basically conscripted from the East and from, parts of the society that are not the Muscovite, upper end class people who are not going to be sent to the fight or the St. Petersburg guys. Um, is it meant that they have a false confidence, not built in a fact. And now America's about to go through the same thing, by the way.
It is.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, not about to.
programming.
It's going through the same
It's
thing.
going through. Yeah, it's going through it. No, totally. Yeah. I mean,
Which I
it's
don't really
like
want to have happen, even though I want Trump to pay.
I
But
don't want to get onto America because Trump
yeah,
takes
yeah,
too much of the oxygen out of the room as it is
right.
anyway.
But it's the same model
But
ultimately. Is that
it is
Ukrainians are
his
not in
whole.
that world. The
We've
Ukrainians
talked.
do not live in
Go
that
back through
capacity.
listens. Go back through to listen to our previous episodes because we've talked about this to
Amen.
death on other episodes. How his whole government is just mirrored off Putin's.
Yeah,
Even
you're right.
down to Laura Loomer, Margarita Simiani, dodgy
Yeah,
Medvedev in Vance. I mean, everything is just geared up. The way his theatrics take place, they're exactly mirroring Putin. So it's no. It's no.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
go the same way. It's going to go the same way as Putin in the end, anyway. But
Remember, I wrote this
yeah,
article. There's no good Russian coming to save you. The good Russian's not coming to save
yeah.
you.
There's
Okay,
no good Russian coming to see.
that's right. So, remember the gist of that article is not about Russians. It's about the people who are out busy looking for that, right? So why I say that is because I never said that there aren't basically good Russians out there in the world. We have some that are here fighting, no less.
Alan's liking that
FYI.
Medvedev and that.
Exactly. But again, I'm gonna say it again. I'm glad to see Alan here. I know Alan knows a lot about it, but one
What
as a
does
journalist and then the other
Vance
thing.
do? Where is Vance? Where?
So
I mean,
Vance is
what
the
is
is
he
the political
doing?
he's the political typhoid Mary. When you want a race to lose, you send Vance.
Where is he? He's
But
stuck out in
what I was going to say about
Pakistan,
Russians,
in
one
Abu
good Russian
Dhabi,
thing
and
that happened this week was the Pussy Riot. Nadia and crew went
yeah,
over
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
Venice and threw a good little demonstration and fucked up the Russian culture offerings in a way that Molodets. I sort of knew that was coming. There's some things that are happening that I got a little wind of that happening ahead of time. And actually, she was here in town a few days ago. So they went right behind that and basically fucked up the Russian pavilion. And so Molodets. This is what I said. You know more by the action than trying to search out. So when a Russian does something good, great. If a Russian takes a helicopter, flies it, and hands it to the Ukrainian, and flies to somewhere in Europe and is killed, Molodets. If a Russian trades sides, comes over and picks up arms and fights Russia, like the way the Volunteer Corps does, or Svoboda Rossiya, or the cyber. Molodets,
Great, well,
we're good
that's
with
it.
this, yeah. That's how you show what's happening. And I will say that I actually have like my friend Volodymyr Zemshukov, who is known as the Luhansk partisan, who I've written about and talked about, and is a good friend. And I really respect Volodymyr. Um, he he always says, I can't help that I was born Russian. Like, although I was raised here, and like he's a Ukrainian by nationality, he's a Russian by blood. And but if you listen to him, boy, he is like, I mean, he is. You would think he was 1930 in Lviv region, if you know where I'm
Mm.
going. Like he's got this Upa sound to him. Like, you sure? Yeah. But there are plenty of Russians like that. If you get them going long enough, they'll tell you, no, 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 we're the problem. I don't mean necessarily me, but we. There is a problem with Russian society, and like Kasparov does this. Kasparov basically comes up and like tells you what's really at the root wrong with the Russian society and how it's worked. And there are plenty of that do that. I've never said that those people don't exist. What I said is the class in the West keeps trying to find the redemption of the Russian. That's the fuck up. The museum curator, the opera house owner, whoever it is that keeps thinking, yeah, but we can't blame art. The fuck we can't, you know? And that it came up this week.
Yeah.
I could do it. I could also
The
share.
one that got me this week,
Yeah.
RT speeching at the freedom of press in Russia. I was like, RT, you mean the
Oh my
very guys that were
God.
complicit in my torture, who are now at the freedom of press in Russia, talking about how the Western media doesn't understand. I mean, seriously, this is state-run Russian media who, the very ones asking me if I brought my guns over from the UK and that I'm a Nazi and did I know Azov were Nazis? I must be a Nazi. So, forgive me, I've got nothing good to say about RT. And I did chuckle, like on what you just said. Freedom of Press Awards? Seriously? Russia Today?
Yeah. And another, we have a Chris in the space here that's with us who says, an American losing rights by the day. As an American losing rights by the day, it's fascinating to know how our corrupt government is viewed in relation to corrupt Russian figures. One of those that came up the other day was press freedom, and that in my broadcast, what, at the beginning of the week, I guess, shit, it's confusing long week, and that America has declined, and yet the standard for press freedom is higher in Ukraine than in America. Like, yeah. And I'll do it this way because I've got my brother Sean here, who's a journalist. We're not supposed to really show these, but I have a press badge in Ukraine. Yeah, no one fucks with me doing my fucking job. I have to hold over the QR code, but I got one of these too. Number
I
7.
got
Yeah,
to.
very proud to have these things. Love doing my press
Me
work here.
too.
And in
Got mine this week,
America,
funny enough.
Cash Patel guys are actually investigating journalists. They're literally using the Department of Justice to go after journalists. So Americans, on Chris's point here, the press freedom around the world is a big deal. And yet, although there are some it is a country at war, there are some things that get into clashes. I have never once had anyone interfere with me doing my fucking job. Um, and if someone said, "Well, that's
Never in
because you're
Ukraine.
pro-Ukraine,"
Never.
like I'm pro-Ukraine, but I talk about things in Ukraine that if this was an oppressive country, they really probably wouldn't want me to talk about those things.
I
And I'll
talk
give you
about
one that you know.
mobilization.
Yeah. Mobilization's one of them, but you're in a category of one of them, which is that, and this bothers me. In the beginning of the full-scale invasion, when we had defenders in captivity, there were some officials trying to tell the families, no, no, please don't hit the streets. Please don't make demonstrations. Please don't. And it left them in the quandary of like, well, then how the hell do I advocate for support? And eventually, whoever it was that was telling them to do something, like Arestovich or someone, they lost. And that's what I'm saying about freedom. You can tell what happens once the gears kick in hardest. And like, if Ukraine was a totalitarian regime of any kind, it's sucking at it. It's totally
Yeah, it's
sucking
really
at it.
sucking.
It's a
It
populist
really
nation.
is. It's got its problems, but it's certainly
And
not
its
a
problems are based in
totalitarian.
populism, an inability to really push through with an agenda that doesn't stop and consult the human beings that are all affected by it every turn. So it
Look
has
at
to kind
look
of
at what
work through
happened
those
with
things.
NAFA and SAPU. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just a protest, and that was enough to stop it. And
And 7
don't
days of
tread on the
pushback, they went, okay, sorry. Yeah.
okay,
Didn't mean
sorry,
to.
we won't do that. It's like, oh no, you push hard on your Mac, he's gone.
Yeah.
It's like
Or the mobilization initiatives often reflect the feedback of angry constituents that will basically, stand up for themselves. And I want Ukraine to be a model for those countries who think that they can't do those things, when they have infinite amount of privileges above Ukrainians, no less, at the same time, like in America, as an example.
and remember, we're at war, so there's a lot of government institutions that are shut down, being investigated just because maybe Russians have
Yeah,
infiltrated something like procurement, or not
correct.
just secure. There are people that and they want to stir up, agitate, create
Yeah,
problems. So you have to understand this is a country at war. This is not a country. Cosmetically, if you come here, it just looks like a normal country that's not
yeah,
struggling at all. So you come here, it's quite easy. You can come to Dnipro. It's not a city under stress. but unless you knew there was a war on, you wouldn't probably know it, unless you knew, sorry, yeah, you probably wouldn't know there was a war on, if you came to Dnipro, because it's just business as usual. People get on with their lives,
Yeah.
and it's easy to forget that there actually is a war on until obviously you get the air raids and the ballistics come in. But this is what it's like. Cosmetically, I don't know how we stay so good after
Yeah.
4 years of ballistics in Russia. This is Russia.
Right.
What I can't emphasize enough is that all the hype about Russia, they can't even take Donetsk Oblast, and they've been going at it since 2014. And this is a country that, despite the bombing, somehow stays cosmetically looking good.
It's the
It's
Babusi
just
with their fucking brooms,
fascinating.
bro. You know that.
It is, yeah, there's a lot of
I
that,
have
to
never
be honest.
been more
Community here.
stunned, and I still feel this when I show up at horrible days. And I'm gonna be very serious, and then show you the smile at the end. But when you show up at a building that's literally blocks worth of devastation, blocks
Mhm,
and blocks of broken glass, and just everyone standing there in shock, and then you hear that sound of brooms brushing up glass, and you turn around and the Babusi are out with the brooms cleaning the fucking streets already. And like it doesn't take long.
mhm.
And it's why the country stays clean. It's actually I'll even like tell you guys about the studio this week. I turned into my inner Babusi and I put my little floor wash rags on my feet, and I walked around in every little corner, and I was like, nope, still a dust. Nope, nope, still. Why are the shoes at the front door? And like I've become very Ukrainian. I'm becoming like my Ukrainian mom. So, it is something that's very important here. Brother, let me say this. I want all of our friends to make sure to subscribe to Sean's channel if you aren't already subscribed. And if you're not a paid subscriber, I'm going to be the digital pimp for a moment and say, put some money on the bones. Um, because Sean, bro, I like when we get on the phone, and I like hearing your work processing going on, what you're doing on the other side. And then what we do often is we sort of meet in the middle from our skill sets and what we're offering. And then like how to use those two worlds we live in here in this world to get ready for like this Friday or some things that are happening. But I want you guys who are watching right now to respect our journalistic brother here who takes his time to think about how to present to you guys what we see here. And I know he does because he talks with me, and he really, really, really respects you in a way. I keep looking this way because I have your little screen copies, all what's running to us over here. But that's important. When we turn on CNN, no one on there is waiting to see what I have to say or what you have to say. And people who are
Nope.
hosting on here really want to know what you have to say and I'm saying this to our viewers. We respect you. We value you as part of what we're doing, not because you financially support it when you do, or not because you increase the numbers of viewers because you become a subscriber, but because when we're doing what we're doing here, if you weren't out there with us, first off, we'd feel kind of fucked. I think
Would be doing it.
would be, but but like we would be living in a world of just talking to our neighbors about how to get through, and we need your feedback sometimes of like, how do you see it when you turn on your television wherever you are? What are you not seeing? What are you not understanding, maybe? So another thing is to offer you to
Yeah.
write to us like you sometimes do and go, I don't understand this aspect of Ukrainian
Can you do
society
an
or yeah,
article on Azov? Yeah,
yeah, that type
certainly.
of
Yeah,
thing.
I don't know
Right.
why I didn't think of it. Yeah, why
Yeah,
why did I do it? I worked there for 2 years. Why did I do
yeah,
that?
exactly.
Definitely. I'm gonna do it for you, Mr. Whatever it was.
Yeah. And so, like Laura
Absolutely.
just said, thank you to you both. And several other people said, I'm going to say right back to all of the viewers, thank you. Thank you. And now I'm gonna give you a little language lesson. So we are in the month of May, or as we say it in Ukrainian, Trav. Traven. Now, if you know what the word I said this last month about April, is the words for the months we have are not because of Roman gods, Greek gods, or Roman emperors. We don't have those things. We have words that are very organic. The word for April is based in the word flowers. So what is the word for May based in? Grass. Why? Because during the month of May, the country is getting greener and greener. I think that's so beautiful. And the next month, actually, Chervin is based in actually a beetle that's red because they tended back in the day when those words were developing, how we came up with months. Those bugs would become more prolific and they would be ground up into like a paint and so I think that's so beautiful about this country. There's little things when I get into the etymology of the language we're surrounded by.
You
Like,
did.
really,
You were
that's
going
where it's
so
come from?
well until you said you ground the bugs up into paint. And they were,
Yeah. Well, I
oh,
didn't
you
do
were
it.
doing
I'm
so.
and
But
and
they
it's just
did, yeah.
really, this to think that the month of May's the root of the word for our word here in Ukraine for the month of May is in grass, that the country is getting greener as as it rebounds from the winter and prepares for the summer. I think this is a really beautiful way of saying this country, and the weather is changing. It's a little cooler today, but it was 80
Pretty hot
Fahrenheit
today.
yesterday. It's not here, but maybe you're getting a spike today. You're a little warmer today?
Yeah, a little warmer
Yeah,
today. I
yeah,
was only putting it because just as the shade came in, it reminded me that it's only
yeah.
May.
Yeah,
It-
and we're gonna be back in for the Fahrenheit side, we're gonna be back in the 40s, 50s throughout this week, mid-60s, which is kinda workable. I'm not ready for the hot part. Um, but, we're into that season, and what that's gonna do for the war is that Russians, they've stalled. Their new offensive is already stalled, so they're gonna have to recoup and try a different offensive in a few months. Whatever they thought they were gonna pull off this time ain't fucking working. They can't pull in heavy tech. They cannot pull in the armor. They are having to avoid hauling in armor, and I loved reading those
Mm.
reports this week. I'm like, "Oh, yeah. This is why they're going to, like, motorcycles and donkeys," you know? We have one here that says, "You have a new paid subscriber. Thank you for what you're doing." So, paid
We should get like
subscribers
a
are
bell or something.
so paid subscribers, let me
Thank
say
you.
to all subscribers, thank you, and to paid
Whoever.
subscribers, you do make what we're doing possible, because we spend more time actually on the what to do than the how to get it done part. Um,
Especially
that's
with a new documentary we're looking at making, so that'll be,
absolutely, absolutely.
we're early we're gonna talk about more of that next
And
time.
speaking of new documentaries, let me talk about one documentary I'm already working on, and I'm gonna do the numbers in the right order. I'm working on my interviews that I filmed last year. I've been working on this case since November 2022. That's my brother Artur, who came back in April. Oh yeah, sorry, August 14th,
You
and
need to
then
clean your screen, young man.
yeah, yeah, of course. Nastusia, who I've been working with to bring him home for years. Violetta, who waited for her husband, and then this guy who you happen to
I
know.
know. I can't wait to
And the
bump into
beauty of it is this week I got to write to Vladislav and say, "Hey, Sean remembers you too." Man, I love him. Like, it was such a good thing that these guys already have a really nice overlay. And so I love doing these things with you. And so again, for the paid subscribers, you're really why we're able to do this. And I see some people in here I know are paid subscribers, and
Thank you.
you take that pressure off of us that we do actually. Chris, are you afraid of dying by a drone? No, if I die by a drone, I don't have to think of my fucking bank account.
You're living off hot dogs or for the next 6
I do.
months.
I eat very cheap. I eat very cheap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I eat very inexpensive. And
It's
actually,
been my pleasure today, I tell you. It's been my
eh,
pleasure.
yeah. So
like
thank you,
coming.
brother.
No, really enjoyed it. Thank you everybody for having us. Another 18 on tonight, which is great. So fantastic. We're going to already get several thousand through the week watch
Yeah,
downloads on several different platforms, including Apple Podcasts and stuff. So it's really great that we get this turnout. It's getting more and more every week, which is kind of people are logging in.
yeah. And then day after tomorrow, I'm gonna do my best to come up here and give you guys a little bit of a video special if I can get it all arranged the next 2 days. It'll be a Mother's Day special, with footage I
Ooh.
filmed today. I will go to the weekly rally as well, and I will do fresh footage from the rally. I will go see my mom, who I love. Um, we'll see if that generates even a photo, maybe a photo. I don't even photograph my own mom with me, and I have no selfie of me and mom. I have photos of her and the other parts of the family, but I'm gonna go see mom on Sunday. And today, like I said, now that we have 76 people here, I spent the day with Ukrainian moms who are waiting for their sons to come out of captivity and messaging one great mom, my friend Tetiana Chuganova, whose son Ruslan came home from captivity last July. And she just got back from some recovery time over in the Zakarpattia region, and she thanks all of you for your support and all of you who've been supporters over these last few years. We say "Дуже дякуємо за підтримки." We thank you for your support. And I will also tell you, we got really good news. I was slightly incorrect on some news I said a few days ago, like a couple weeks ago, but it still gives us good news later. I mentioned that my friend, Denis Zelensky, who was remembered as coming home singing "Oya Luzi Czerwona Kalina" on the bus, so strong that you couldn't miss when he just came off that bus. "Oya Luzi Czerwona Kalina." And as soon as I saw him, I was like, "Holy shit, who's this brother?" And I was messaging him on Instagram, and then we're great friends. I will be wishing his mom happy Mother's Day with her son home. And guess what? I was wrong that he got married the other day, because guess what? He's getting married in a couple months. So we're not there yet, but we're almost there. And it was 1 year ago this week on the 4th that my little brother Dennis came home. And I really want all of us to really love that young man, to be thankful for him. He's working, he's singing, and he's working on his wedding, which will be in a couple months. And of course, I'll let you know how it is. He knows you guys pay attention. And unlike a couple of my friends who are, I have some defenders you'll probably never hear about because they've been through a lot and they're not really interested in the camera. But I talk to them and we're cool, and they'll inform me. But they're not like, they don't want to do interviews. They just want to go back to their lives, and I want that for them. But there's a couple guys like him. They don't mind that you guys. They like being reciprocal in a sense that, like, when they hear that you care, they like to say it right back to you. Oh, thank you so much. So Dennis, and a lot of these moms, I will be sending all of your happy Mother's Days and support on a Mother's Day to the people here over the weekend. We got a lot of activities. We have a pro Europe rally here in Kiev tomorrow, and
You do?
so yeah, I'll be going over there to film a little bit, see what's happening, and then again on Sunday I will try my best to bring a Mother's Day program from what I filmed, some things that are on my archive, if I can get it pulled up. And so join us on Sunday night. And of course, don't miss us on Fridays. The one thing that doesn't change in the schedule unless my brother here is busy traveling, Mr. Travel Man.
No, no more,
And
no more.
I know you don't like to do
I'm
too
joking.
much.
It's too far. Edmonton, Canada is
Absolutely.
too far.
Yes. So thank you. And as we say, Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Slava
І піз
Nazi.
смерть ворогам. І пиздець Російської Федерації.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for
Goodbye.
having me.